Long before he was crowned King Elessar, long before he walked into the prancing pony under the guise of Strider, he was simply a boy without a name. In the year 2931 of the Third Age, Aragorn was born to Erethen and Gilrain. He was the 61st in an unbroken line of descent from Elendil, the ancient High King of Arna and Gondor. But this royal blood was a death sentence. Sauron's spies were constantly hunting for the heir of Isildur, seeking to extinguish the line of kings forever. When Aragorn was only 2 years old, his father was shot through the eye by an orc arrow. His mother, terrified for her son's life, fled to the only true sanctuary left in Middle-earth, Rivendell. To protect the child from the all-seeing eye, Lord Elrond took the boy in as his own foster son and concealed his true identity. He was given the name Estel, which means hope in the Elven tongue. For 20 years, Estel grew up in the peaceful valleys of Imladris, entirely unaware of the heavy crown that waited for him. He learned the lore of the elves, the healing arts of Elrond, and the history of a world that was slowly fading. It was not until his 20th year, after he had proven himself by accomplishing great deeds alongside the sons of Elrond, that the truth was finally revealed. Elrond called Estel to him and told him his true name, Aragorn, son of Erethen, chieftain of the Dunedain of the North. With this revelation, Elrond handed him the heirlooms of his house. He gave him the Ring of Barahir, a relic older than the world's current age, and the shards of Narsil, the broken sword that had cut the one ring from Sauron's hand. However, Elrond withheld the scepter of Unminors, the symbol of the northern kingship, telling Aragorn that he had to earn it through years of profound trial. The very next day, Aragorn's life changed forever. Walking through the woods of Rivendell at sunset, he heard a woman singing. Turning, he saw a maiden of such breathtaking beauty that he thought he had stumbled into a legend. He called out to her, calling her Tinvil, believing he was looking at Lithene, the most beautiful elf of the First Age, but it was Arwen Undomil, Elrond's daughter, newly returned from Lothlorien. In Semplin set moment Aragorn love, but this love carried an impossible price. Elrond, who loved Aragorn like a son, laid down a crushing condition. Arwen, an immortal elf, could not bind her life to a mortal man unless that man was the High King of both Arna and Gondor. Aragorn could not simply be a chieftain. He had to unite a broken world and defeat the greatest evil of the age, or he would lose the woman he loved forever. Thus began the long, brutal years of exile. Aragorn left the safety of Rivendell and embraced his destiny not with hesitation, but with grim determination. Unlike the cinematic portrayal where he runs from his lineage, the Aragorn of the books accepted his burden completely. For nearly 70 years, he fought a secret, relentless war against the Shadow. He traveled across Middle-earth under the alias Strider among the common folk, and Thorongil the Eagle of the Star among the Lords of Men. As Thorongil, he rode in the armies of King Thengel of Rohan, father of Theoden. He then travelled south to Gondor and served the steward Ecthelion II, father of Denethor. He became Gondor's greatest captain, yet he kept his true identity a secret. His crowning achievement during this time was leading a daring, surprise naval raid on the havens of Umbar under the cover of night. Thorongil burned the Corsair fleet and personally killed the captain of the haven, crippling a massive threat to Gondor. But instead of returning to Minas Tirith to claim glory, he sent a message of farewell to the steward and walked away into the east and south, journeying deep into enemy territory to learn the hearts of men and the strategies of Sauron. Years later, exhausted and worn, he passed through the borders of Lothlorien and was welcomed by Galadriel. She clothed him in silver and white, and there, upon the hill of Cirin Amrith, he reunited with Arwen. For a brief moment, the ranger became a king. They plighted their troth, promising themselves to each other knowing the agonizing road that lay ahead. His path soon intertwined with Gandalf the Grey, recognizing that Sauron's power was growing. They began a desperate hunt for the creature Gollum. For years, Aragorn tracked the miserable creature through the most dangerous lands in the world, finally catching him in the treacherous dead marshes. Aragorn physically dragged Gollum all the way to the elven realm of Mirkwood, surviving immense physical and mental exhaustion to deliver the creature for interrogation. This act alone provided Gandalf with the final pieces of the puzzle regarding the One Ring. When the War of the Ring truly began, Aragorn did not shy away. At the Council of Elrond, he did not sit silently in the corner. He cast the broken shards of Narsil upon the table and declared his lineage. And before the Fellowship even left Rivendell, the elves reforged the blade. He named it Andúril, the Flame of the West. He carried it proudly, an open challenge to the Dark Lord. From the very beginning of the quest, Aragorn was preparing to go to Minas Tirith and claim his throne. The breaking of the Fellowship tested him deeply. When Gandalf fell in Moria, the crushing weight of leadership fell onto Aragorn's shoulders. He guided the remaining company to Lothlorien, where Galadriel gifted him the Elfstone, the Elessar, the name by which his people would eventually know him. When Sir Uruk-hai attacked at Amon Hen, Aragorn was forced to make a terrible choice: follow the ring into Mordor, or save Merry and Pippin. Knowing that Frodo's path was one of secrecy that he could no longer help, he chose loyalty to his captured friends. He, Legolas, and Gimli ran across the plains of Rohan for 3 days and 3 nights without rest. In Rohan, his royal pride shone through. When surrounded by the riders of Rohan, he did not hide who he was. He threw back his cloak, drew Andúril, and introduced himself not as a wanderer, but as O King, I am Aragorn, son of Erethan, and am called Elessar, the Elfstone Dunodan, the heir of Isildur Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Even Eomer was struck with awe, seeing the ancient majesty of a lord of men radiating from the dusty ranger. As the war escalated, Aragorn's book journey diverged massively from the common cinematic myth. After the victory at Helm's Deep, Aragorn did something terrifyingly bold. He took the Palantir the Seeing Stone, recovered from Saruman, and he looked into it. He directly confronted Sauron mind to mind. Aragorn wrenched control of the stone from the Dark Lord by absolute right of his bloodline. He showed Sauron the reforged sword of Elendil, sparking fear in the Dark Lord's heart and forcing Sauron into a premature, hasty attack on Gondor. Knowing he needed to reach Minas Tirith quickly, Aragorn took the paths of the dead, but he did not go alone with an elf and a dwarf. He was joined by the Grey Company 30 of his own people, the fierce rangers of the north and the twin sons of Elrond. They rode into the mountain, and Aragorn summoned the Oathbreakers. In the books, the army of the dead did not fight at the Pelennor Fields. They were a terrifying, ghostly force that Aragorn used to capture the Corsair ships at the southern port of Pelargia. Once the ships were captured, he released the dead from their curse. Aragorn then loaded the ships with the living, breathing men of southern Gondor who had been held back by the Corsair threat, and sailed up the river Andúril. When the black ships arrived at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the defenders of Minas Tirith thought they were doomed. But then Aragorn unfurled a massive standard, a banner woven in secret by Arwen herself, displaying the white tree of Gondor and the 7 stars of Elendil. He leaped from the ships with Andúril shining like a white flame, turning the tide of the war and obliterating Sauron's forces. Yet, the true proof of his kingship did not happen on the battlefield. After the fighting ended, Aragorn refused to enter the city as a conqueror. He set his tent outside the walls, waiting for the permission of the steward. But as night fell, he secretly entered the city in a plain, grey cloak to tend to the wounded. Ancient lore stated that the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. Using the herb Kingsfoil or Athalas, Aragorn pulled Faramir, Eowyn, and Merry back from the brink of death. As he moved through the houses of healing, the people of the city realized the truth. Word spread like fire through the dark streets. The king had returned. Knowing that Sauron still had tens of thousands of orcs in Mordor, Aragorn organized a desperate suicide mission. He marched to the Black Gate, not just to distract Sauron, but to openly challenge him as the legal, rightful king of the West. Drawing the eyes' full attention so Frodo could destroy the ring, and it worked. The ring was unmade, the Dark Tower fell, and the shadow was lifted. On my einst outside gates of Minas Tirith, Aragorn was officially crowned. He did not crown himself. He asked Frodo to carry the crown and Gandalf to place it upon his head. As he was crowned, he spoke the ancient words of Elendil when he first arrived in Middle-earth. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place will I abide, and my heirs, unto the ending of the world. Soon after, Arwen arrived in the city, and they were finally married on Midsummer's Eve, ending the Third Age in joy. King Elessar ruled for 120 years of unprecedented peace and glory. He rebuilt the northern kingdom of Arna, restoring the ancient capital of Unminers. He renewed the alliances between elves, dwarves, and men. But even the greatest of men are mortal. In the year 120 of the Fourth Age, sensing that the days of his vitality were coming to an end, Aragorn made his final, most profoundly Númenórean choice. Unlike the kings of old who clung to life until they became weak, paranoid, and senile, Aragorn chose to give back the gift of life gracefully. He went to the house of the kings in the silent street, laid himself down on the long bed that had been prepared for him, and called his son Eldarion to him, handing over the winged crown of Gondor and the scepter of Arna. Arwen stood by his side, weeping, begging him to stay. But Aragorn comforted her, speaking of the hope beyond the circles of the world. He kissed her one final time, closed his eyes, and simply went to sleep, passing out of the world in complete peace. Surrounded by the majesty and grace of the ancient kings,